Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization. Today is May 1st, 2024. It's May Day here in Deutschland. It's a national holiday, but I think it's important that I appear before you with an update because the world is not stopping. So let me just begin by pointing out what's about to happen in Southwest Asia. Blinken is touring. He was in Saudi Arabia. I assume he's going to be in Israel. And I assume whatever message he sends to Prime Minister Netanyahu, that Netanyahu will do what he's intending to do anyway. Now, what Netanyahu announced yesterday is that even if there is a deal for hostages return and a ceasefire in Gaza, that the invasion of Rafah will take place. He said, quote, "We will enter Rafah and we will eliminate the Hamas battalions there, with or without a deal, in order to achieve the total victory." Well, why would Hamas make a deal if they're going to be attacked in any case? So it's apparent that Netanyahu, in league with the extremists, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, and others, intends to carry out the plan, which on paper they say is to eliminate Hamas, but in the meantime, the collateral damage is eliminating tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians. And that's why the campuses are erupting. Not because George Soros is spreading around a little money. Soros always does that. And in fact, Soros is probably paying the provocateurs who are trying to provoke anti-Semitism. But the demonstrations have been largely peaceful, but they're young people who are coming to realize that they have no future unless this system is changed. And they're starting with the commitment to stop the United States from supporting or being complicit in genocide in Palestine. Now, meanwhile, what you may have missed is one of the other aspects of the big picture. Another bank bit the dust yesterday. The Republic First Bank of Philadelphia failed. Actually, it was on April 26th. This is a bank that had to be taken over with $1 billion from the FDIC. It was taken over by Fulton Bank, which is another Pennsylvania bank. The Republic First had $6 billion in assets, $2.9 billion in loans. But many of those, or a significant portion of those loans, were in the commercial real estate business. And those are failing. So what happened is that the money was given, the billion was given to Fulton Bank to take it over. But Fulton, which has $32.8 billion in assets, 43% of its loans, that's $14.1 billion, are in the $23 trillion US commercial real estate market. The commercial real estate market in the United States is collapsing, and it's bringing down, potentially, the whole banking system. Now remember, last March, the New York Community Bank failed and was purchased by former Treasury Secretary Mnuchin with help from the government. The New York Community Bank had $114 billion in assets. Now, regional banks are trapped because many of them are having to borrow from the Fed at high interest rates, or charge, I should say, their customers high interest rates. And meanwhile, the values on commercial real estate are going down because commercial real estate property values are being devalued. And so you're caught in a trap. You charge more for interest on loans, but you have a collapse in the underlying collateral. Now, the 8th largest bank in the United States, PNC Financial, and the 21st largest bank, M&T Bank, have had double-digit declines in their portfolio in the first quarter of 2024. They're not alone. Last year, the U.S. had the second, third, and fourth largest bank failures in history, requiring over $30 billion in losses, which were taken over by the FDIC insurance fund. Now, we see that this is in the commercial market. It's also in the home mortgage, where we are at a higher level than I think in recent history of late payments and defaults. the interest rates are going to stay high, according to Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. Why? Because inflation remains high. Why? Because we're not investing in physical economic production. And what we're doing is rolling over debt, huge amounts of debt. It's not just the federal government with a $34 trillion deficit or $34 trillion debt and adding about $1 trillion every 9 months. The interest on that is $1 trillion a year. So we're going deeper and deeper into debt, and these bailouts only add to the total amount of debt. Now, keep this in mind as you watch Congress vote another $95 billion for wars. The 60 plus billion for Ukraine, 25 or so billion for Israel, 8 billion for Taiwan. And these battles that are underway, the two, Ukraine and Gaza, and the one that may soon happen in the South China Sea, none of these have anything to do with protecting your security. These are part of a deployment by the corporate cartels that run the Unipolar Order to protect the neocolonial system, which is required for them for looting, that they need the funds in terms of the cheap raw materials they get, the cheap labor, and the enforcement of austerity to keep the loans being repaid. It's a recycling operation to try and protect a system which is essentially bankrupt. The debt is unpayable. The total amount of government debt, corporate debt, personal debt can't be covered, no matter how effective and efficient the colonial system is. And the problem is that the colonies themselves in this neo-colonial system are now saying enough is enough. We want to keep our resources for ourselves. We want to build our own sovereign nations, and essentially saying to the French, the British, and the United States, get out of here. We're going to take care of this ourselves. And as we saw in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the US and French were kicked out. The Russians and the Chinese came in and were invited in. Why? Because they're investing in those countries. There's not a one-way flow of loot out, but a commitment to invest in those countries. And so while we're sitting here building up uncollectible volumes of debt, the Biden administration and the fools in the Congress just added to that with the money that was voted last week. So let this sink in. There's no future without a change. We are pretty much alone in pointing out that these wars and conflicts underway have two features to them. One, this is where the federal government is spending money. The idea that somehow this will help the economy by keeping the money that's voted by the Congress in US corporations. Well, to do what? To produce weapons that go to wars that are going to be lost? So there's that element to it, which is completely absurd. And the other side of it is that these wars are designed to stop those countries that are moving away from the dollar system, the weaponization of the dollar against them, and are looking for alternative payment systems, alternative trade systems, development projects, and investment. That's why Putin said the BRICS are unstoppable. That's why Putin is hated even more than for what Russia is doing in Ukraine, which, by the way, I would argue is totally justifiable, what Putin decided to do with a special military operation. There should have been negotiations. There still should be negotiations instead of spending more money. And so when you watch what's happening on the campuses, keep in mind that maybe some of these students have an inkling, more than their parents, that the policies that are being adopted by our corrupt government have nothing to do with a future for the children. And that a future which is defined by US complicity in genocide is not a future that many of these students wish. And that's why they're out demonstrating. So let that sink in. Now, later today, I'll be talking with Helga Zepp-LaRouche. It's live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It will be archived if you can't make it then, but if you can make it then, or if you have questions, send them to us at questions@schillerinstitute.com or .org, I'm sorry, questions@schillerinstitute.org. So hopefully I'll see you later today.